Hey all, Jason Levon, priest at St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Welcome to another edition of Pause and Pray. When I was in the seminary many years ago, I had the blessing of living for 5 weeks with a family in the Dominican Republic, in a very poor area of the country on the western side of the Dominican Republic. I was there because I was trying to learn Spanish. I was also there to work with some missionary priests from Spain. And we did lots of things during the day, like fix or dig wells for people in remote villages so they could have access to clean drinking water, or build a nutritional center and work on that where women and children could get at least one good meal a day, or even teach in local school systems to be partners with teachers and help little children have a little bit more access to some education. When I was living with my family, though, spending time with my family, again, it was an incredibly poor area of the country. There were things that I take for granted here that they didn't have there. We didn't have running water. Electricity was spotty. And yet, what I loved about that culture in my time there was their ability to find life and richness, this harvest of abundance in some of the most, what I took to be, mundane moments of life. Like coffee, for example. I drink it in the morning just to get me going so I can get on to the next thing. But when I was in the Dominican Republic with my family, we could linger for well over an hour with some café con leche. Or if I was invited into a game of dominoes, which again could take hours of just being with others and enjoying life and savoring life. Or at the end of a hot and humid day, enjoying an ice-cold Presidente beer with some reggaeton music. I even learned to appreciate the gift of the siesta. I don't ever nap here, but there it was a blessing to have a few hours of peace and quiet and rest in the early afternoon when the day was so hot and humid. Yes, there were things that they didn't have there that I take for granted here, but there was also a richness in their life that I didn't have. Namely, this wonderful ability to celebrate and find a harvest of life in what seemed to be the most mundane experiences. Today, in the daily office, we read from chapter 4 of John's Gospel, where Jesus has this encounter with the Samaritan woman at the well. And she came there to do a very mundane task, to gather water for the day, to cook with, to clean with. But in her approach to this mundane task, she finds anything but the mundane in her encounter with Jesus, who's able to plumb the depths of her heart and her life and bring her to this harvest of life, this experience of living water that transformed her into an evangelist, if you will, to go out and tell others about this Jesus she encountered and bring others to celebrate that same harvest in life. And it all came about from one of the most mundane acts, going to get some water. In verse 35 of chapter 4, Jesus tells his disciples, "Look around you and see how ripe the fields are for harvesting." Today, we pause and pray and reflect on the gift of a God who has this amazing ability to celebrate harvests in what seem to be the most mundane aspects of life. And we pray for the grace to look at those mundane parts of our lives with a new set of eyes, and maybe come to a deeper sense of richness and how our lives are touched by the divine in those mundane moments, like coffee with a loved one in the morning before heading off to work or to the home office to work these days. Or maybe it's in a board game, a dominoes with a good friend, or a cold beer with a good friend as well. Maybe it's in the everyday cooking and cleaning that open up our lives to hospitality with others. Or maybe it's in the many thousands of mundane breaths we take every day that we're not even aware of, that not only sustain our lives, but help us experience life in a new way each and every day. And to come to relish, just like God does, that each and every moment of our lives, whether we realize it or not, we're all living out of a divine harvest. God's peace and blessings to you all.